All right. So what the main topic that I want to cover today is what's called the economic model. Okay. And this is a foundational tool for your business. That's this is a I don't know however you want to relate to it, but like a KWism, right? In a way. Um, and but it's also just a model and process, a model for outlining the sales process that can be applied really to any sales industry, for the most part that we're going to go over here. But what this tool allows you to do is to dictate what activities need to be taking place in order to reach your goal, and also measure the results of those activities so that you can understand where you're at in relation to reaching your goal and whether you're on time or not, or on pace or not, I should say. I apologize. So I'm going to share my screen here, and I'm going to go to this spreadsheet. Each of you are going to have this email to you this week, but what I'm breaking down here is this economic model that we're going to run through in detail from here. But you know, to define the economic model again, it's breakdown of the sales process and the sales funnel. You'll know how much effort is going to be needed, for each key activity or part of the process, by using this model. So when you get your hands on this, you're going to be able to play around with, you're only going to want to mess around with the categories in green. Okay. So to be able to, start by, I want to sell $3 million in sales volume. And let's just say for the next year, and I'm gonna model this off of a $200,000 average price point, would lead you to selling 15 units, um, to do that. To sell 15 $200,000 homes would total 3 million. Just to give you a sense of how this works, if you wanted to, change that to $6 million goal, well, now you need to have 30 units sold. You see this one changing here. If you'd want to do it off of 4 million, 20 units, so on and so forth. 40 million, 400,000, 2 units. 400 million would be 2,000 units, right? So just to give you a sense, that's formatted for of how it's formatted, I should say. So back to 3 million, $200,000 sales price, and you're going to sell 15 units to do that. This number of work weeks category essentially is the time frame for when you want to sell these properties in. Now, I chose 40 here because typically we're going to do this model, we're going to have it apply for, the next year, right? And one philosophical coaching element is that you really shouldn't budget for any more than 40 work weeks within any calendar year. Okay. So there's 52 weeks in a year total, right? Budgeting for no more than 40 work weeks means that not only are you taking vacation, because I'm not, I mean, if you are in a position to take 12 weeks of vacation, awesome, please do it, right? But, you know, let's just say if you said, well, I only take 2 weeks of vacation and I can budget for 50 weeks for this model to play out. Well, the gap is that you're not accounting for anything else in life, right? You're not accounting for that week in the wintertime when you get the flu and you're down and out for 3 days, and then you have, just you're not yourself the other 2 days, and that's a shot week for the purpose of the activities that are going to be needed in this model to play out. You're not accounting for just an overall bad week in a funk, right? You're not accounting for the bad things in life that happen, right? That are going to take you out of the business for a certain amount of time, right? God forbid, you know, you lose a loved one and you have to deal with the week of the funeral and this, things like that, right? Like that. Plan your business out to where when, you know, good or bad things are happening that take you away from an intense focus on your business, plan it out so that you can actually do that. And it's not like, well, I already used my 2 weeks of vacation. My model's on a 50-week year, and I don't have time to celebrate or grieve or whatever it is, right? I don't have time to be in the hospital for a surgery. Like I have to work. I guess I'm gonna have to, let my appendix burst or whatever it is, right? So this 40-week year model and philosophy is not only conservative and realistic, because the reality is just like it's unfair to expect yourself to be on at the level that we're going to talk about, that this model, states of how you need to be on. It's unfair to do it for 50 weeks, right? But it also just accounts for life happening. Okay, so any questions on the 40-week year, before I move on to the model itself? Okay. If, let's just say, you wanted to project this out for the rest of the calendar year, and we're about halfway through it, and you're gonna say from here, I'm gonna do this in the next 20 weeks. Well, you can adjust accordingly. Okay, but playing around with these spaces in green in this model, or something that each of you are going to be able to do, and kind of tailor this to reaching your goals from here. So the model itself, all right. So this 15 comes from this 15 units sold that we calculated up here, right? So now we're going to run through this model in a matter of, okay, in order to sell 15 homes, you need to have an accepted offer to have a closing, right? So what percentage of your accepted offers actually close is the question that you're going to need to ask yourself. And right now, I'll take a step back to say, for these percentages and these conversion rates, you're just guessing, and that's okay. And I'm going to walk you through how I would, encourage you to guess, which is how this model is built out. And from here, it's a matter of, okay, what do we need to do to prove these conversion ratios right or wrong? But for now, we're just going to be guessing. So to take a guess as to how many accepted offers it takes to get to a closing, that number should be pretty high. 80% is the number that I'm going to use. There's even room for improvement to get to 90%, maybe 95%, depending on the size of the business and the practice of the business. But what this number tells you is that you have an accepted offer, you should definitely be more than a 50-50 chance of getting that to close, right? Meaning that we don't want to have, a business where it's just, let's get these offers accepted and let's throw them at the wall and hope that they stick. We want to be in the position where it's like, no, this offer is accepted and it's closing, and there's not much that can go wrong at that point. So, for example, let's say you are able to get an offer accepted with a home inspection. Even in that, that case, like, you still want to have your business operating to where the buyer is aware of what's going to come up in this home inspection. It's been discussed, it's been agreed upon that they're still interested, knowing that. And the home inspection is a formality to make sure that there's nothing else significant that was missed, that wasn't already considered as this is the buyer weighs the choice of buying this home or not. So what you do during a showing and what you do during the offer process is going to dictate whether or not you get through a home inspection contingency, for example, or not. But how well you go through the entire process, of consultation with a buyer, to to negotiation, to getting an accepted offer, and they're teed up, with reasonable expectations will influence whether this percentage is high or low. Generally speaking, you want to be getting offers accepted that are going to close, obviously. So you want this to be way higher than 50%. 80%, I think, is conservative for this group of newer agents to use. Just understand that, yeah, it could be 90%, maybe 95%. But that's, accounting for little fallout, because let's talk about what could go wrong with an accepted offer. Well, maybe, the buyer has a health situation and they decide they can't buy a house anymore and they have to default on the contract, and that stinks, but they have to do what's in their best interest. Maybe the buyer loses their job and their mortgage commitment gets denied, before the commitment was issued. And they're protected by that contingency, and the deal falls as a result, or falls apart as a result. Maybe we talked about a home inspection, but maybe they just didn't know what they're getting into, and the home inspector let them know, and then it wasn't the right fit, and that deal that was under contract is now dead. Generally speaking, though, you want this to be pretty tight to where, 8 out of 10 offers that you get accepted close, at minimum, frankly. Questions there? Again, like, feel free to jump in and ask questions here. It's, goes a lot better when it's participatory, not me, talking for an hour. So with that said, in order to convert at an 80% level, in order to close 15 homes, if you convert 80% of what you get under contract to close, you're going to need just under 19 accepted offers throughout the course of the year in order to close 15 deals. Okay. So to get our 19 accepted offers, the step before that would be that you have formal working with relationships that you're excited about working with, because you're believing they're going to be something that turns into an accepted offer and something that turns into a closing and therefore a paycheck. Generally I'll call this the A in the pipeline category, right? Like, they are ready, willing, able to buy or sell. They are on the same page with you in terms of the process that needs to play out. They're under a buyer agency agreement. They're ready to go, right? Like, these are the people that you're like, these are the people that are going to transact. I've got them qualified. I've got them on board with the mission that needs to play out. And these are the people that I'm excited to work with. Different conversation for a different day in terms of how to rank your pipeline, but these are not like, well, they're saying they're going to buy in the next couple of years, or, yeah, they want to buy, but they need to get pre-qualified still, and they haven't taken that step, or, something to that effect. These are the people that you're excited, that you're banking on to get paid on, frankly, right? What's the conversion rate for that category? This is, as a newer experienced agent, I'm going to go, lower and more conservative than I would with somebody that's been years in the business and running the business in a tight manner. So here I'm going to say 50%. 50% of the time, the people that you feel are in your pipeline as an A, 50% of them will get under contract. As you improve your skill set, as you improve your overall business practice, that ratio should go up, because you want these people to go through a process with you where they're coming out of it with, like, you have that confidence that they're an A in the pipeline, and they have complete understanding and willingness and acceptance of what they need to do in order to transact, and you're both on the same page. When that happens, that conversion percentage should increase. Okay, but for now, let's use 50%. That tells you that in order to close 15 units and to get 19 units under contract to do so, you need to pick up about just under one new buyer or seller or investor per week that you're adding to your pipeline as an A to do that. 0.9, call it one. So if you're adding one new person in your pipeline per week, that adds to that category of being ready, willing, and able, and you're confident they're going to transact, then you'll sell 15 homes in the next year. And keep in mind, this is a 40-week year. So really that math is, just under 40 people that are needed for the year in the pipeline. Now, in order to get somebody to be an A in the pipeline, the process to do that is that you have to engage with them formally and consult with them formally. And we often call this an appointment. So you're going on an appointment to consult with somebody to decide if you're willing to work with them, if they're willing to work with you, if the two of you are on the same page to do that together, you're going to come out of that with a relationship with somebody that you're working with, hopefully. I'm going to use 50% for this conversion ratio as well, meaning that 50% of the time that you get a lead that is willing to, give you the opportunity to show them a home or give you, the opportunity to help, help them understand the process, and you meet them for coffee or you meet them at the office, or even if it's a series of phone calls, just understand that you're consulting in that process, and 50% of those consultations are going to come out where 50% you end up working with and 50% you end up not, for one reason or another. Some of the reasons may be that you're just not qualified. You tried to get them, approved for a mortgage and they couldn't. If they were approved, they'd be, ready, willing, and able to work with you, but they're not. So therefore, that was a loss in that category. But you still follow up with them, and hopefully they become a win at some point down the road. Sometimes it may not be a fit to work with them, or they may feel that way about you, and that happens. Like, that's okay. Like, there's going to be an element of, you need to grow your business to get to a point where it can be selective. But the goal for each of you should be that you're able to grow a pipeline so big that you need to be selective of who you add to it. And if they're going to be added to it, meaning that you're working with them and you're helping them, and they're doing so by your rules, and they're meeting your expectations, and you set them from the beginning in this consultation process, and they're agreeable to it, and they come out of that with like, yeah, no, I want to work with you. I understand what you're saying. I understand what I need to do. I get what you're going to be doing. I get what you charge for compensation. I understand that we need an agreement to work together, and game on, let's do it. Not all appointments, not all consultations, not all opportunities are going to shake out that way. So if that conversion ratio is 50%, you need to go on about 2 appointments per week in order to pick up one new one that you're going to be working with formally from there. I want to bring emphasis to this jargon term of appointment, okay? And really make sure that it's clear that a formal appointment, a formal consultation, what has to be formal is the process that you take people through. The setting or the event itself, so to speak, of consulting with somebody in person, at the office, in a conference room, or at a coffee shop, or at their kitchen table, whatever. Like, yeah, don't get me wrong. It's always good when you have that opportunity to do so and to take advantage of it. Well, understand that you could piece together a buyer's consultation from a process standpoint, and it may play out over the course of 5 phone calls, over the course of a week and a half. And you come out of that process with a ready, willing, and able buyer that is under an agreement to pay you the compensation that you charge, and is willing to go through this process with your advice and meet the expectations that you laid out to work with them on. I'm not discouraging like in person or formal, appointments or consultations, but just understand that, in a way, you're always consulting. So just understand that you have the ability to do that without having to make it like a formal to do. Keep in mind the day and age we live in is like, hey, I mean, look at you all on Zoom, right? Whether you're in your sweatpants or not, but people don't necessarily want to, have to get dressed up and go meet you at your office. There's plenty of people that still want to do that and would prefer to do that. So, you have to kind of know your audience and know who you're talking to and ask what they prefer. But just keep in mind that you can consult at a really high level without having it to be, some formal sit down. All right. Last part of this model essentially tells you how many conversations you're going to need to have per week in order to go on 2 appointments per week. The conversion ratio for how many conversations do you need to have in order to book an appointment? I'm going to use 3%. I've always used, this is kind of more subjective because, there's not, I don't know of a source that just has hard data of, real estate agents at various levels and how many people they need to talk to in order to, gain an opportunity to consult with, right? And the reason there's not hard data is just like it's so variable and subjective and people run their businesses different ways with different techniques. So one technique may convert higher than another, right? But generally speaking, I would say that a real estate agent is doing really well if 5% of the time that they talk with somebody, they create an opportunity to consult with somebody and book that appointment. Meaning that if you have 100 conversations and you get 5 appointments to go help somebody with their real estate wants, needs, questions, you're doing pretty damn good. Okay. So not to pigeonhole or limit, based on experience, but, for the purpose of, this group and where we're at together in the business, let's be conservative and let's say 3% of the time we're going to convert into 3% of the time we're talking to people, we're going to convert that into a consultation opportunity, an appointment to do so. So now this tells you that you need to have 62.5 lead generation conversations in a week to go on just under 2 new appointments to consult with somebody on their needs, buy, sell, invest. Heck, even rent, right? But their real estate needs need 2 appointments per week to be left with 1 new person that you're working with formally per week in order to get just under 19 offers accepted in order to close 15 deals. The control what you can control element that this comes down to is how many conversations can you have? Within all this model, the only thing you can really control is how many conversations do you have. The next category down in this model would be how many attempts does it take to get into 62 conversations? And starting off, I would, I'm going to recommend to track that so that you have a general knowledge of, okay, I get into a formal conversation, or not formal, but I get into, an interaction, a conversation, communicating two-way with somebody, half of the time that I reach out, 50%. So if that's the case, to get to 62 conversations in a week, I'm going to have 124 attempts. But this becomes I want to sell 15 units. Specifically, what do I need to do in order to do that from an action level, activity level standpoint? All that matters, with everything you just heard me ramble on for the last half hour, the point of this exercise is to get to, okay, all that matters is I need to go out and have 62 and a half conversations this week. How do I do that? What matters from there is that, okay, the 62 and a half conversations that I had, was I able to produce 2 appointments from that? Over time, if you track that, then you're going to be able to know what your conversion rate is. And if yours is 5%, great, we can revise it. Because watch what happens to this model when the numbers change. Well, if you increase to 5% of the conversion rate, now you only need to have 37 and a half conversations. So you can look at it that way, or what would happen if you continued to have 62 and a half conversations, but you just created more appointments off of it? You're gonna, do more business, right? I'm going to be sending this spreadsheet for you to play around with based on what goals you want to create for yourself from a, volume of real estate sold and a, price point that you want to target to work with. That'll tell you how many units you're going to need to sell and what that goal looks like. And you'll be able to, play around with these numbers to your liking, or, let's not like more so, but to be able to play around with the numbers to where it's like you're, establishing a model that you want to try and adhere to. I would recommend doing this ASAP and then going out and pushing to where it's okay. What do I need to do to have 62 and a half conversations this week? Becomes a mission. And did that create 2 appointments for me? And did those 2 appointments lead to one person that I'm working with? In the short term, that's what you need to go out and control. That's how you're going to be able to create a path to where, 15 units is within your reach. Talk to me. Questions on this? Anybody got a unit goal that they want me to plug into this so you can get it? Anybody want to talk through something specific to them to know how to relate to it?
So Jason, I think my goal was 15 and that's what the numbers you put over there. So I think it looks good to me.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, I'm struggling with like flipping properties and all this stuff. And of course, my buyers are struggling with same thing. I mean, going overpriced. So I just decided to get more clients instead of just waiting on closing for the clients I have already.
Love that mentality.
Yeah, thank you.
That should be the mentality for every single real estate agent, no matter what level they're at. The name of the game is to go out and get more clients, always, even when you have, when you feel like you have more clients than you know what to do with.
Yeah.
All that matters is your effort in your activities and being consistent with them to go and get more clients, to go and create more opportunities to turn into clients that you're working with for more. Any other focus than that can be dangerous if you don't have the habit established of doing just that. So when you have priorities that interfere with the activities needed to generate business, to generate opportunities to help people with their real estate needs and wants, if there's any other priority that's on your plate than that, and you don't have a habit of doing that, you're in trouble. So let me repeat what I just said, because this may be something that you may want clarification on. But if you're focused on doing anything other than going out and creating opportunities for new business by communicating with people and interacting with people, if you have any priority on your list other than that, and you don't have a habit of doing that, I worry. What do you think of when you hear that? Because you're in a position right now, a lot of you, where it's like, what do you mean? I need to figure out everything that I need to figure out in order to do that. There's
I
all this
guess.
stuff that I need to learn. There's all these trainings with him.
Yeah.
Not
I
saying it
guess.
doesn't matter, but
Yeah. I guess for me, Jason, personally, I feel like I'm doing my business, but on the same time, I'm learning too, because of course, as a new agent, you learn so much. I mean, I'm
yeah,
every day, I feel like when I'm talking to my clients, when they ask me questions, I mean, I always say, like, oh, I can get back to you if I don't have the answer. Like, few things, I had a habit of doing CMAs for my clients before I go to the open house. I mean, not open house, but if I schedule the showing, just to make sure that I'm not wasting their time and my time. But then I stopped doing that, and now I feel like, okay, we are going through all these properties, and then we are doing CMS. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of still, I'm thinking like, what's better way to do it to speed up the process? Do it before or do it after? Of course, I my plate is full right now. I have a little one at home, so as much as time I get, I try to do it, but still, timing wise, too, I'm struggling and keeping up with my work.
understood. And this is where it gets difficult, right? Because the reality is like when you go out and do what's necessary to create these opportunities that lead to business and clients that you're working with, yeah, now you have, you know, the potential for exponential more time needed to spend on your business. The concept becomes that when you take away time to build the business and create opportunities, then over time that just leads to less opportunities. Right. So you may get into a groove, and this is typical. I mean, most, you know, I mean, here, let me, this is gonna be bad, but let's get the whiteboard out here, maybe. Where is it? There. You're all gonna not be impressed with my drawing skills, but this. So here's what happens. We're gonna build and we're gonna lead generate and we're gonna make calls, and along this roller coaster, we're creating opportunities. We're doing deals. We're getting closings, right? And somewhere along the line here, we stop creating more opportunities, right? So probably right about here at this mark, we stop creating more opportunities, we stop lead generating, and then before we know it, we're going to come down in terms of, you know, the business that we have coming in, and the new opportunities that we have coming in. And then somewhere right around here, hopefully not at rock bottom, but we realize like, oh my God, I don't have anything left in the pipeline. And now we start creating more opportunities again. And then it starts to come back up. And then, you know, the same cycle happens. You get busy, and right about here, it's okay, let's stop. And then it keeps going up and down and up and down and up and down forever, right? So it's possible to where you can just have a business that is activity based always as the priority, and that you just have this flow and funnel of a growing, pipeline and base of sales that, you know, allows your business to constantly grow versus riding that roller coaster. But if you don't want to ride that roller coaster of like, business coming up and then it dropping off, well, it's a direct correlation to how many people you talk to in order to create opportunities. But yes, and it's tricky when you get you know in the business to balance a dedication of staying on the business as well. So how we're going to have an option to stay accountable to do this, I'm going to institute, for agents that want to participate, and I would strongly encourage it. And I think it's more so of a, okay, if you're not going to do this, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you commit to accountability to grow your business? But I'm going to be sending out a weekly tracking form of your activities for the week that was, that can be an accountability feature for you, first and foremost, to where like this is coming and you want to participate in being accountable for your business and your results and your growth. And you want to be proud of what you put on this form. But also, once you have this data compile that you'll have access to, you'll be able to know what, a conversion rate looks like the more that you track from here. So tracking for, your activities and tracking as a business owner, well, first of all, it's just necessary to have a performance tracking base as a business owner, right? Like any major corporation without a financial reporting division, a CFO, right? Like that team doesn't, that dynamic just doesn't exist. You have to have it. You have to know where you stand at all time within your business. I'm imploring you to know where you stand at all time based on the activities that you're doing compared to what your model tells you need to be doing. So every week you're going to have an opportunity to participate in accountability for yourself and deciding what your one thing focus was for this past week or ultimately for the week ahead to decide this, right? But like, are you focused on attempts? Are you focused on people that you're talking to? Are you focused on people that you're adding to the database? Meaning like, all right, I want my focus to be database additions, and I have a goal of adding 10 per week. Is that the focus? And then can you go out and do it? But the additional categories are how many lead generation attempts did you make this past week? How many conversations did you complete this past week? How many new additions to your database did you make this past week? How many leads did you generate? Not necessarily like how many appointments and how many formal consultations you had, but just start building the pipeline just by identifying people that could be a lead or they're telling you a lead and it made, hopefully you convert it right then and there. But if not, you're thinking like an effective real estate agent business owner to compile as many potential opportunities for business as possible. And then the last question, what do you need to focus on in the week ahead? So know this will be coming from here. And it's, for your benefit. Like this isn't I'm gonna go through it and berate people that don't do it or don't only have 2 conversations in a week, but this is an accountability feature for your business. And if you don't use this, just ask yourself what you are going to use to be accountable to grow. Because there's a difference between wanting to grow and reach your goals and being accountable to do the activity and do the work that's needed to reach them. So this is going to be, something that you can take advantage of from here. Questions on that?
I have a question.
Uh,
So, with the accountability piece, what if you don't have a problem having the conversation, don't have a problem going out, having the real estate discussions? It's you know, having the conversions to having quality, I want to say quality clients, right? So the inventory is really low. So with some of the houses out, what I'm seeing with some of my clients are they don't like what's out there. So, we're going to see houses, we're going and we're looking, and I look every week to see if there's something that matches what they're looking for, and not much is coming out. So I'm seeing time progressing. And I think Sony kind of hit it too about maybe shifting or looking at things different, and also trying to build more clientele while trying to wait for my clients to find something that they like.
So I'm sorry, what was the question? Like, how do you
So
balance both, or?
I guess because right, you're saying, okay, with the sheet, you're accountable for your lead generation, right? Yeah, you can reach out as much as you want to, but getting actual quality versus quantity. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, I do. And what I'll say is, you know, it's kind of unfair, this business, because you have to do both quality and quantity, right? So it's unfortunately it's not one or the other. Assuming there's, somewhat high level, or not even high level goals, but I mean that, that model that we laid out was for 15 homes sold. That's a pretty good business, right? Like that, a lot of people would be happy about with that, right? Certainly, this group and what you're looking to graduate to, like that would do it. And that, is a breakdown of what we have there, 62 conversations or something like that per week. That's high level sorry, that's high level quantity. Like, to give you my subjective opinion on activity levels, like for a full-time agent, okay, I would expect a minimum level of activity for a good week to look like around 50 conversations per week. Okay. Now, high level, like you're gonna kill it, I'll bet my house on you type of activity would be 100 conversations a week, just for perspective. So it's not like you need to find a way to go from 50 to 500. It's how do you get from 50, how do you get from 0 to 50 as first level? And then next level would be, you know, how far to 100 a week can you push it? You're going to have enough quality that comes from that quantity over time just by pure law of averages. Right? So that's one way to answer the, okay, how do I get quality? Is that law of averages play out the more that you communicate with people and interact with people, and specifically lead generate to people in a manner where you're attempting to provide value to the real estate world life. Like, quantity examples and instances will come the more and more that you do that. The other thing along those lines is that the game that we're playing is very much farming based, because, you have to be able to plant a seed and then water it consistently throughout your career. Meaning the people that you've contacted so far in your career, well, one, hopefully, if you've been in it for more than 3 months, well, you need to contact them again, because the MREA tells us that the model for keeping personal connections in order to, lead generate properly is that you're having a personal connection 4 times a year with everybody in your database, meaning once every 3 months, once a quarter. So if you've been in this business longer than 3 months so far, and if you've only contacted your database once and gotten through everybody, well, good news, you're up again. Everybody's up again. Because it's been more than 3 months. But as you consistently do that, and every quarter, every 3 months, somebody's getting a connection attempt from you. Over time, you're gonna catch them when the timing is right for them. Because keep in mind, the issue with quality is that, we're going at a transaction from a sales process that frankly very rarely happens in people's lives. It's not like we're selling cars to where it's, well, every few years somebody's going to get a new car, every 5 years or so somebody's going to get a new car, and you got more of a transactional turnover. It's grown in recent years, but like, there's people that won't move, that you're going to sell somebody a home now, they may not move for 30 years, and you may be retired by now. So the length of, time it takes to transact for everybody in your database is so drawn out that it's tough to really have it play out to where it's like, oh, boom, there's random quality based on a random attempt that I made today. It's more so you're making the conversations happen in order for them to come back to you because, wow, you've always been in touch, and now I'm actually ready to do something. I want to move, and you're the first person that I thought of because you're so consistent with, how you communicate with me and the value you provide. Not that that's what they're going to tell you, but that's your mission, right? Is how consistent can you be with your communication and interactions, and can you make it valuable? The other part of what you mentioned, Larry, is you know, and we'll dive into this from here, believe me, but how well are you executing in the consultation process to where things that you're coming out of that, they're coming out of that with full clarity, full expectations, everything's manageable, they know, what this market is and what they need to do to compete, right? They know, because of limited inventory that things are competitive, and to get with you for ultimately kind of the final say, but you've trained them to look at something that's listed at 199.9 as a $300,000 neighborhood that's not going to sell for 200, and we gotta expect it to go a lot higher, and if your budget's only 200, well, yeah, we shouldn't be looking at that in that example.
Yeah,
But to consult your way to positive outcomes of quality is definitely a topic that we're going to be diving into as a group. Sorry, I interrupted you.
no, that was good. I was actually gonna go there next because I was thinking that too. Like I read the email. It was good. It was good insight to reflect to, because I started thinking, when I am doing some of the showings, am I really going in with a true game plan, other than
Yeah.
my buyer wants to see this. I'm following up. Did we like this? Do you want to put in an offer on it? Because there's some houses that I do believe that my buyer should have jumped on, and I gave her a nudge, but not enough, especially with how things are going. Like I said, there's not enough inventory, and sometimes she would come back like maybe a week and a half later, and next thing you know, the house is pending. And I started to think too, am I not being firm enough in some of these conversations?
Yeah. Well, listen, and I realize you feel far off from being there, or I can assume you do. I'm speaking to the group right now, right? And that's okay, right? And that's what we're here for, is to build the skill set around this, to build the mindset around this, to be able to let it play out from here. And this is where, just understand that you have the support to make sure that you have just what you need to do things in the moment as much as possible. But the bigger picture of growth, yeah, it involves like, okay, there's some challenging elements at play that I need to execute on. That I may have to work on just like conceptually and from a thinking standpoint and like a process standpoint and like practicing that and rehearsing that and role playing and scripting things out, right? Like that's where this business gets, you know, um not complex by any means, but it's like you have to, you gotta put the work in, right? It's just showing up to your first consultation without any practice or knowledge. It's like going into a gunfight with a pair of scissors. So just clear up specific to you and what you've been, what you expressed here, right? Like, the process on your end, getting off this call should look like, okay, what is my process for getting people to work with? Meaning like you've identified the opportunity, you've got somebody that you're consulting with, right? Like, do you have a process for that? Thinking about it at that totally zoomed out level, and then zoom in further of like, okay, what do I need to do in order to understand more about what their goals are, what their needs are and wants are, what they're thinking and what they're comfortable with. What do I need to do to set the stage and set the expectations for what we need to do together if I feel like I can help you at that point as an agent?
No, understood.
It's really like, and you're not going to have the answers, right? So it's a matter of, being able to have, to be positioned to where you're filling in the blanks, right? And then coming to us with like, what blanks do I fill in here? What answers do I need? I don't even know. Like, this is what I'm thinking. We'll be able to be like, yeah, okay, yeah, good. And here's what to do next. But you have to be able to think critically here in this business. You have to be able to assess where you're at all times and measure the gap and look to fill it. But for the purpose of today's lesson, to rewind the tape, right? You'll get an email with the link to the spreadsheet I was working off of. Pick a goal, model it out, be conservative. Don't think that you're gonna, 95% of the deals that you get accepted are gonna close, and 80% of the people that I'm working with, their A's in the pipeline, are gonna get an accepted offer, and I'm gonna go on appointments, and 7 out of 10 times I'm gonna end up working with those people. Like, dumb this thing down. Be conservative. Be real, be realistic, but be conservative. Because the reality is, if you have a conservative model and you outperform it, well, you're just going to do more business. I think we'll all be okay with that, right? I'm going to spend the last few minutes here on a couple things. Like, one, does everybody know? I'm going to go AI for a minute as a topic. And the first thing I'll tell you about is within command here. See this little, 3-star thing? That's KWIQ, which is, chatbot, AI chatbot type of thing that, is a good resource. So like, can you give me a template for the economic model that we just covered? testing it out here. Hopefully it doesn't make me look bad. There you go. So it's doing its thing, spitting it out. But this will be relevant to things in command, things in KW land, so to speak, right? I want to turn you on to another, and it's still going here. So as AI goes, it goes. The other thing I want to turn you on to is GRAR has its own customized chatbot type of AI service. And it's called ARDI, ARDI. I want you to save this number. I'll put it in the chat here. But 585 565 5797 GRARD is coming in the chat. 585 565 5797. This is essentially a hotline that you can call or you can text it. And anything local to our board, of real estate. So like questions about forms, questions about they're building this thing out, making it smarter as AI goes, right? And they're feeding it local town codes, right? So if you had a question of how to what size sign could be installed on a listing in Palmyra or whatever, like, it should have that. Depending on how you talk to it and what you follow up with, right? You may need to clarify more things, but just wanted to share a couple resources in addition to, just live humans. Don't get me wrong, I'm not encouraging to come to a live human, first and foremost, right? But when it's midnight and you're working away, these can be great resources to take advantage of for your business to get quick answers, to get, additional thoughts as to how to go from here. Do you have any questions?